When I was young, I lived on a street. The street was called Britain Street in Germantown. And this street was really interesting because most of the kids were musicians or dedicated athletes. There was a really interesting person that lived two doors from me. His name was Bayard Lancaster. He was kind of an avant-garde jazz saxophonist. And he practiced every day. Whenever we didn't hear him, that's when we knew he was out of town. He taught me and a few others to just kind of look at music and art like you're in a garden, and everything was beautiful, and taking in whatever you could take from that. My mother was very influential in my life as far as music. I think she chose me out of the three of us to be the musician. I'll never know why, but eventually I got to the bass, and she found this school in Germantown called the Settlement Music School. She would take me there every Saturday. At first I hated it because, Saturday mornings, wow. But it was good for me at that time because I was a wild young kid. After graduating from high school, I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go to college. And I went to this college in Philadelphia. It was actually a music academy called PMA, called Philadelphia Musical Academy. I remember for myself, I guess being a person of color, I always felt like I had to be 2 or 3 or 4 times better than the next guy. So I was trying to be 40 times better than the next guy. So I kind of used that energy to my advantage. A very important thing that happened in my life was the meeting of Chick Corea. We got on the stage, and for some reason, we had a connection that was unlike any other musician that I had played with. This one night we got together and we sort of talked about, let's put a group together, and this was the beginnings of Return to Forever. And it was a real exciting time because there was a new form of music that was emerging, which we were spearheading. And then I went on and did many other things, started my own band. I noticed that there weren't too many records or there weren't too many compositions written specifically for the bass. So I started writing music that was bass orientated, playing melodies and et cetera on the bass. And so I used to take time off to just compose. I used to write a lot of things that I actually couldn't play on the bass. So many things I had to practice my own music. When I got into doing film composing, sort of completed at least what I want to do at this point in music. My wife came to me because we were talking about how I like to teach music. And she mentioned to me, she said, you should have your own foundation that helps young people get further education or higher education. Because I used to tell her how tough it was for me when I was coming up in college, how I never had money and all that sort of thing. So she said, yeah, let's form a scholarship foundation. So we did. And we connected up with a school in Los Angeles called the Musicians Institute. I don't know how many people now, but we sent lots of people to give them the ability to go to higher education or just continue with their education. When I travel around the world and I do lots of interviews, at some point I always mention the time I spent in Germantown when I lived there, and then when all the years that I studied there. And Germantown has a very serious history to it. It's very important to know and acknowledge history and be aware of it. I feel like I have a long reach back into jazz history because of who I played with. Germantown will go on and more history will be created. I have a lot of faith in human beings, and I'm sure a lot of that history is going to be great, and they'll continue on documenting it, and life goes on.